No one is a winner in this situation. The damage done has been horrendous for us all. I've really got to get up and start from scratch. Well, this is a right mess. How do you make that decision? How do any of us make that decision? Time is a healer, and I'm sure that in time I will soften, but not today. The damage done is horrendous, and I wish I could go back and fix it. Welcome to Extraordinary Stories Podcast. Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. Thank you, as usual, for your emails, your messages, your posts, your tweets. Thank you very much for just generally for getting in touch. Right, I'm going to introduce a little new section here, and it's called Extra Talk. See what I did there? Extra Talk. So it's like extra talk, but it's also extras talking. Brilliant. It's so clever. It's just a little bit at the start of each episode where I'm just going to bring you a little update on some of the hot topics going on at Extraordinary Stories Podcast. So we'll start with Rhonda McMillan Bogger, who, I hope I've said that correctly, who posted a picture of a bottle of beer called Kilt Lifter. Lovely. She said, I was just thinking about your hairy man legs. Right. Rhonda, mind out of the gutter, please. Come on. So she posted this picture, and then Antonia Camilleri Litzinger, again, hope that was okay, asked, what do you Scottish guys wear under your kilts? And the answer, Antonia, is nothing. Not a thing. It's it's breezy up in there. In other news, I had an email from Zune Pallister commenting on my wonderful South African accent and my pronunciation of South African things. And she was offering to help me in the future. Now, do you know the really weird thing, Zune, is that this episode is also set in South Africa. But by the time I got your email, it was too late. But yeah, blah, blah, blah. Next time, okay? Rigby Dave, hello. I've just found your message on Instagram. God, it's been there forever. Sorry, I haven't seen it. Thank you for your Swedish pronunciation tips. They will be useful in the future when I'm doing another Swedish story. Now, in other extra news, I have to play you a bit of this, right? Because it is just fucking fabulous. Right, so a rather wonderful extra called, hang on, Madison Haig Rogers got in touch. Now, Madison is an artist, and she says, my passion is bringing synthetic, I don't know what that word means. Hello, I'm going to start this again. My passion is bringing synesthetic experiences to people through the use of space, sound, and computer magic. And as an artist, I thrive off connection and interaction, so do not be afraid to contact me. I have to tell you about what Madison's done because it's rather fantastic. She has created this absolutely beautiful performance on a beach using fire. So it's this really incredible fire dance, and if you can just picture the scene, right? You've got some incredible fire dancing going on a beach. There's a really cool soundtrack happening to accompany it. Listen to what's accompanying it. People often fantasize about trying out different, far better lifestyles, but few actually change. Imagine this, right? Cool fire dancing on the beach. It's all in gorgeous slow motion in the video, and this is in the background. And their dreams cold. They just don't know that all it takes to realise a fantasy is a small amount of money, a bit of luck, and a whole lot of courage. How sexy is that? I felt really cool when I saw that. I was like, oh my god, I feel like I'm so 2019. That is brilliant. So thank you so much for that, Madison. It's absolutely amazing. Alright, finally, in Extra Talk. Is that what I've called it? Extra News? Extra Talk. I forgot what the actual name of it was. Catherine Mills, thank you very much for your post on Facebook. Catherine has posted a photo of her cat Frankie, and in the photo he has his legs wide open and she says he's a tart. So if you are looking to slut shame your pets, then get on the Facebook group. I actually do love an unflattering photo of an animal. They just really make me laugh. Alright, just one more thing before I get going on the story. Stick around at the end because I'm going to be telling you a new way to contact me. Alright, it's story time. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. Alright, this story starts in Johannesburg, South Africa, with two very different females. One of them is Sandy Dawkins, and the other is Megs Parker Clinton. Right, now these two ladies are complete strangers. Don't know each other, and they have never met. But what they don't know is that their lives are about to become so intertwined, so connected, that for the rest of their lives, they will live in each other's minds forever. But, okay, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back and tell the story. So, it's Johannesburg. It's the early 1990s. And we have these two strangers and they're living 20 miles apart. Now, if we just look at their lives individually, it'll just give us a little gauge of who they are. So, Sandy Dawkins, she's in her early 30s, and Sandy is single. Now, she lives in a fairly poor area of Johannesburg. She works low-paid jobs, and she's not got very much money. Now, she did have quite a good job, Sandy, but the company that she worked for went bust. I think it was a banking industry. I think she worked in the banking industry, and I'm sure it was within banking that she worked. Anyway, the company that she worked for went bust, and she never quite recovered from that. So she became a bit of a survivor in life, a real doer, a real practical person. Now, I'm not selling you Sandy's story like, oh, let's all feel sorry for poor Sandy because, she's not got very much money. She didn't really feel sorry for herself. But there was a bit of a period where, she lost the security of her job that she had, and she spiralled into a bit of a depressive period. She, more than anyone, is aware that she didn't have an awful lot of money and was living, in quite a poor part of Johannesburg. I really hate it. I really do. I really hate it in other podcasts that I listen to when a person gets defined by their wealth. But there is a necessary reason that I'm telling you this. It's not just a way for me to define Sandy for you. So that's Sandy. Sandy is blonde. Just to give you a visual, just so you can sort of see Sandy in your head. So if you need a way to remember it, Sandy blonde. Sandy blonde, yeah? I mean, I could do a rousing rendition of Sandy from Grease by John Travolta every time I mention her, but I won't do that. So that's her. Now let's go to the other woman in the story. This is Megs Clinton Parker. Now, Megs lives in a really relatively nice part of Johannesburg, a much, much more affluent area. If you need a way to think about Megs has dark hair. So we've got one blonde and we've got one with dark hair. Now, the one thing that these two women who live in very different economical circumstances and don't know each other, the one thing that they share is that they're both pregnant and they're both single. So let's look a little bit at what happens when these women give birth to their sons and take them home to raise them and to live their lives. Well, for Sandy, she gives birth to a baby boy called Robin, and she just absolutely adores Robin. Now, as I said, it's not an easy life for Sandy. She's on her own. She doesn't really have a great deal of friends and family. She doesn't have like a big, massive support network around her. And she has to work really, really hard to put food on the table to feed baby Robin. Megs, on the other hand, well, as I said, has a bit more money, but she also has support. She has a family around her to help her raise her son, and her son is baby Gavin. So both of these boys, they're being raised by single parents. Shout out to the single parents out there. Woohoo, you're rocking it. These four people are about to have their lives turned upside down. The man who Megs fell pregnant to, he isn't in her life or her son Gavin's life, but she's getting child support payments. I don't know, what do you call that elsewhere? I think it's alimony, you call it in other countries, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, child support payments. Now he starts to get a little bit funny about this, and he's saying, I'm not entirely sure I am the father of this baby. I mean, I don't know what he's trying to say about Megs here. She's a respectable lady. She's living in a nice house. But he's not convinced that he is the father of Gavin. I don't know. Maybe Megs had a few different boyfriends going on. Who knows? So Megs says, right, well, fine, okay, I'll have a maternity test. No, she will not have a maternity test, everyone. She will have a paternity test, because I don't know what a maternity test is. Apparently, I've just made that up. Yeah, a paternity test, right? So, she goes, the test gets done, and now nothing will ever be the same. It turns out he was right. No, he isn't the father of 2-year-old Gavin. But it also turns out that Megs isn't the mother. Neither of these two people, neither Megs nor this man, have any biological link to the 2-year-old Gavin. and they are scratching their heads. I mean, imagine that. Imagine. Right, Gavin is now 2 years old. Megs has had him every day since he was a baby. And these tests prove you have nothing biological to do with this child. What the fuck is happening here, I ask you? Well, let's go 20 miles across Johannesburg to Sandy. Sandy's son, Robin, is also 2 years old. And they're quite happily going around their life. Yes, it's a struggle. Yes, they don't have much money, but they're surviving. Sandy gets a phone call from the hospital where she gave birth, and they say, "Can you give us the exact date, please, of when it was that you gave birth to your son?" So she does. Now that date matches entirely with Meg's date of giving birth to Gavin. And this is where the absolute mindfuck begins. 2 years prior to this day when Sandy has received this phone call, there had only been 2 births registered in that Johannesburg hospital. 2 women, 2 baby boys were born, and at the end of the day, they each went home with their son. Or so they thought. Little did anyone know that a nurse had accidentally mixed the 2 boys up and sent them home with the wrong mother. Oh, for fuck's sake. Hideous. Just hideous. Oh, a mess. This is a right pickle, some might say. I mean, in all seriousness, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous that this has happened. This was the early 1990s. I mean, this wasn't the 1920s when babies maybe weren't labelled correctly or shit like this could happen. Do you know what it made me think of? Right, it made me think of, do you know that Bette Midler film where it's the one that's got Lily Tomlinson in it, Big Business I think it's called, and they're twins and they get mixed up at birth. It's one of my favourite films ever. It's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it's a whole like switching at birth type story. Anyway, it's really, really good. Bette Midler actually yodels at one point in this film, so I mean that's great on its own. And then she goes and she plays this big like New York executive, and it's really good. And there's a man. Anyway, do you know what? I'm getting lost. I'm getting sidetracked by a Bette Midler film, so we'll pull that right back. So, the news just begins to sink in for both of these parents. And of course, they're each faced with a decision. What do you do? And I mean, I'm asking that question to you now listening. What do you do? Because when I started researching the story, I stopped at this point and I thought, I don't know what the fuck you do in that situation. Megs immediately, she says she's keeping Gavin, her 2-year-old. She says, and I think this is probably, it's coming from the heart, it's coming from the absolute place of honesty. She says, it's just not possible to reject a baby that you have loved for 2 years. Even if that baby is not your own, it's not possible to reject that baby. Fine. I mean, I don't think any of us would disagree with that. So now, both mothers are brought together and they describe how at this stage they went through the following emotions. They went, first of all, through, I'm not letting my baby go. The child that I've been raising for 2 years, even though not my child, I'm not letting that child go. But that was quickly followed by curiosity. Both Sandy and Megs agree it's not as easy as it seems to say, oh, I'm not letting my baby that I've raised from the day they were born go. But actually, curiosity kicks in. And curiosity makes you want to understand and know your own biological child, which, of course, I think we can all understand. I mean, it must be the strangest thing to have this absolute love for this baby you have. This baby's not your own. How could you ever stop thinking, but my actual child is out there? I mean, those are the natural stages, of course, to go through. Well, do you know what no one mentions here? I'd probably be going through a stage where I'd be looking for that nurse. And I'd be like, hey, you, nurse, you've caused a right bloody mess right here. But anyway, that's not gonna fix the issue, is it? Sandy says, I felt like I had been electrocuted when I heard that Robin wasn't my child. I collapsed. It was as if I had passed out from shock. Then I cried. I cried for the child I had and for the child that I didn't have. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that my life had changed forever. So they face a choice now, both Megs and Sandy. Do they swap the children who they have spent 2 years raising to get the baby that's actually their own? Or do they just keep things as they are? After meeting and discussing and talking it through, they decide they're going to keep the children that they always thought were their own. So, Sandy will continue to raise Robin, and Megs will continue to raise Gavin. So like I said, the kids are about 2 years old at this point, 2, maybe coming on like 3. And they, obviously, they have no idea. I mean, they're 3 years old. How would they know? I'll bet, right, I am going to bet this. There are some people listening to this podcast, I'm sure there will be, who are raised in situations where you didn't know things at 3 years old, but there were things going on in your family. I think it's much more common than you think for families to have their own kind of, secrets in that way. I've heard conspiracy theories in my own family, not my like close family, but my wider extended family, about sort of aunties, great aunties who had children who might not have been their own, but you know, there might have been a bit of jiggery pokery going on. But different days, different times, different lifestyles. I think maybe years ago that might have been more, I don't know, maybe it still happens a lot now, I'm not really sure, but you know, there's a lot of like, you know, I was raised by this person who I always thought was my auntie, turns out she was actually my mum, and what, you know, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, the next phase of this begins, and I guess we can see where Sandy and Megs are coming from, in that you just want to hold on to the child that you always thought was yours. But they make a decision when the boys get to like age 9, 10, and they decide that they're going to let the boys meet, and they're going to explain the situation. So how does that go then? Well, it goes really well at first. The boys, they become like best friends. And Megs and Sandy, they sort of unite as like a parenting team. And while, yeah, they still live their independent lives, at least the two boys get to spend some time together. Now, of course, that first decision to, keep life the way that it was made when they were 2 years old, but what's going to happen now as the boys get older? Because, of course, that was Meg's and Sandy's decision. But these two boys will get to an age where they can have an opinion about it. And they do. Robin, raised by Sandy in, quite poor conditions, gets to 15 years old and he starts to wonder, what would life be like if he'd been raised in a nicer part of Johannesburg? What would money be like? And he starts to think about Gavin and how Gavin has all of this luxury and he doesn't have that. Meg's, after all, that's his real mum. And, she has a bit of money. Robin says, I'm not saying I've never had anything, but Sandy and I have had to really work for things. Gavin gets everything easy. And in some of the interviews with him, you can hear there is a bit of resentment in his voice. Even at 15, he's thinking, I think the grass is greener somewhere else. So this is now like 2004. And Gavin, he's attending a quite posh school. And when he's asked if he feels any empathy for Robin on the poor side of town, he says, no. This just breaks my heart, and I think this is part of what really attracted me to the story. At age 15, Robin decides he's going to leave Sandy, the woman who has raised him since a baby, and he's going to go and live with his biological mum, Megs, and Gavin. Now, he doesn't just quite make this decision on his own. It's heavily influenced by Megs. You see, what Megs wants here is she wants her real son and the son that she has raised. She basically wants them both. And that's what she gets. It means that Sandy is left entirely alone. And I think that's pretty shocking. I really hate this bit of the story. I really hate that she just gets left behind. Robin will say, I love Sandy, and leaving the woman who raised you after 15 years isn't easy, but I have to. So, Robin moves in with Megs. Megs at this point, in interviews I watched with her, things I read, she starts to take a bit of a nasty turn here. I really started to dislike her. She says of Sandy, who now has no one, I'm not sending my son back just because she's sad. I won, and I'm damn glad that I won. Alright, Megs, calm down. Calm the fuck down. However, things are about to take another drastic turn. Robin may well have decided that he wants to live with his real mum, but very quickly they discover they don't actually get along very well. He will say, she keeps trying to change me. She keeps trying to make me into someone I'm not. She says he won't conform to his new life. And there's an undertone in it, right? You can hear this from her. There's an undertone of her almost going, I've put him in quite a posh school. I've brought him to this nice area, and he's just not coping with that. He's just not dealing with it. So, for a few years he stays, but it's rough times, and their house, I think, is just chaos day and night, because Megs and Robin, they just fight all the time. And then Gavin kind of gets in the middle, and I suppose if you look at it from Gavin's perspective, he's just lived in that house with Megs all of his life. He's never known, even though Sandy's his real mum, he's lived with Megs forever. And then all of a sudden, this brother arrives, and it's just fucking chaos. So, at 18 years old, Robin decides he needs to just get away. He needs to get out of this home, away from Megs, and he moves to a whole other part of South Africa. Meg says, "When he left, my heart just broke. It never occurred to me that it would fail. And when it failed, my world fell apart." Yes, I get that. But can we also think about poor Sandy, who has nobody? Nobody! She has raised him for 15 years. And then he fucked off. The other problem is that Robin and Gavin, well, I already said this a second ago, but as much as they might have been close and loved that whole kind of, oh, I've got a brother thing when they were 9 or 10, they are not getting along now. They're at each other's throats constantly. Here's another reason that I changed my opinion on Megs massively, is that the minute that Robin leaves the house and says, do you know what, I'm going to another part of South Africa, I just don't really want to be a part of this. She almost does the exact same thing. She just goes, do you know what, this is all too much for me. I don't want this crazy family that I've got. But you created this. I mean, you did create this, right? You've got what you wanted. You've got your biological son. You've got the son that you've raised. And now, because it's tough and it's difficult, Megs has suddenly decided, oh, this is all too hard. I don't want to be a part of this anymore. So Gavin moves out. Gavin leaves the house. And what it does is it gives Gavin time to just deal with himself for a while. And what that time gives him is the time to reflect and realise that actually he is gay. Fine. Great. Lovely. Throw a coming out party. Play some I'm coming out. I want the world to know. Get your Diana Ross on. All good, right? Brilliant. Now, Meg's reaction to this, this woman, honestly, she drives me insane. She says, this in an interview I watched there, she says, I suppose him coming out made me think, maybe I need to fix myself rather than try to fix him. Fix him? He's not got a broken leg. He's gay. You don't fix gay. I'm sorry, what are you talking about? She goes on to say, but I want grandchildren. And she says to Gavin, if you're gay, I can't have any. And Gavin says, well, I'll adopt some kids. If I meet a partner, we'll adopt kids. And she says, no. We've had this trying out of other kids before, and it's just been an absolute disaster, and it just won't work. Megs, you're a bit of a nightmare. I'm not going to lie, you are a bit of a nightmare. So at this point, Sandy is still in the same situation. She's got no one living with her. Megs has now got her actual biological son living in another part of South Africa, doesn't want anything to do with her right now. She's got her son, who is in quite a fragile place because he's just come out, having to move away from her because she's raging that she's not going to have grandkids. It is a mess. It's an actual disaster, this situation. Like, if you look at it, none of the 4 of those people are happy. They're all in a really unhappy situation in their life. Now, I'm not saying I have the solution or I know what would, make them better or I would make that happy, but it's horrendous that it's ended up in this situation. So, just to start to bring it full circle, we'll go back to Robin. So, lived away for a few years now. He meets a woman called Liesel. Actual Liesel, seriously. I thought that name was just made up for the sound of music. Anyway, he meets a lovely young woman called Liesel, and they have a son. So to look at this now, Megs has a biological grandchild, but she's not in contact with Robin. So she's not getting to see that biological grandchild that she wanted so much. Sandy still got no one, and Gavin is left out of the equation entirely because it's like, oh well, you're gay and you're not going to give us any grandchildren, so get out of the picture. But actually the happiest person here, the one who's actually the happiest in the situation, is Robin, because he's living away with Liesel, the daughter from the Von Trapp family, and his baby son. And of course, he's asked in an interview, if it turned out that this wasn't your son, it is your son, but if it turned out it wasn't your son, would you give him up? And he says, no, never. I would keep him, and I would keep it a secret that he was someone else's. He'd always be with me. When Sandy and Megs are told that is Robin's response to this question, they say, that's the easy answer. You need to wait until it happens. Sandy never sees anyone from the family. She falls into a very dark, depressive state. Gavin, he lives with his partner, happily at a distance from Megs, and he never sees his biological mother. Robin, as he gets older and as his son gets older, he makes his peace with Megs and he allows her to see her grandson. The relationship between Robin and Megs takes time, it takes effort, and it takes energy. These are 4 people whose lives were utterly ripped apart by a simple mistake. But I think what's so interesting is that the now reflection on it from both Sandy and Megs is that if they could go back in time and they could go back to 2 years old and finding out about that mistake, they both agree that actually what they should have done is just made the swap there and then. It would have saved the years of heartache. And yeah, there would have been a period of adjustment for those 2-year-olds and for those mothers and for everyone who was affected by that. But years later, they're still living with it now, daily, because they decided that they didn't want to make the swap to take back their own biological child. I'll end here with what Sandy has to say about it. She says, there would have been a lot less damage done if we had just swapped them. It would have been heartbreaking to swap them at 2 years old. But by not doing that, the damage we have caused is horrific. No one in this situation is a winner. We have all suffered terribly. Time is a healer, and I'm sure in time I will soften, but not today. Every day I've really got to get up and start from scratch. Because I once had a child and I now have no one. And so ends the story. Alright, well, okay. I hope you enjoyed that. I know swapped birth stories are told quite often. I just found this one so bizarre. Because honestly, I sort of did feel, when I started it, I sort of felt like there might be a happy ending to this one. And I went, oh my God, it's just absolute devastation. None of these 4 people's lives ever recovered from that single mistake that nurse made in that hospital. And yeah, I mean, you can't spend forever blaming the nurse, but, you know, fuck, yeah, just makes you think. So that was the second episode in the family series that I'm doing. Okay, so here's the thing, folks. I can never end this podcast. We know this, right? We know this. We've learned this about me. So here's the deal. I've had to think about it this week. I'm not going to end the podcast anymore. Instead, you are going to end the podcast. And I'll tell you how you're going to do it. You're going to call the Extraordinary Stories Podcast hotline. That's what I'm calling it. I'm calling it the hotline. And leave me a message. And at the end of the episode, I'll play the best messages. I'll play what you've got to say. Okay? If you've got a suggestion for how to say goodbye, phone, leave me a voicemail. Tell me about it. Want to send me a text message? Do it. Just get in touch. I'm going to give you the all-important number for the Extraordinary Stories Podcast hotline. Okay? And it's yours. It's yours to phone. Do what you want with. Okay? Just don't do things like, if I give you the number, don't enter me into things like sex lines. Don't start playing like funny buggers and doing all sorts of weird, like signing my number up for all sorts of nonsense. So I've bought myself a little phone, you know, like when people have like 2 phones, like when they're having an affair. I'm not having an affair, but this is just my little separate phone. So I'm going to give you the number. You need to sort out what the dialing code is for wherever you're calling from, but please get in touch. Please leave me a voicemail. It would make me so happy to hear from you. Okay, if you want to get in touch, it's 07943 991 778. And that number again, 07943 991 778. Thank you very much. I will also post this on Facebook and Twitter, on Instagram, and I look forward to receiving your voicemails and hearing from you. Okay, alright. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope to hear from you soon in any way that you want to hear. Any way that you want to hear. Brilliant, Barry, well done. In any way that you want to get in touch. Okay. Goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on. Let's do it. Let's get it over.